3 minutes after 11 is the time. Tempting in the current climate to worry that everything moves backwards. We make one step forward, 2 steps back as a nation, but some things really do change and really do undergo significant transformations in public thinking, and there are few better examples of that than drugs in this country. This programme has probably done more phone-ins on cannabis legislation and cannabis legalisation than any other on the planet, but I want to come at it from a slightly different angle today. Not least because there's a measured and a relatively well-informed article in the Daily Mail, of all places, suggesting that the legalisation of cannabis for medicinal purposes may not be the end of civilization as we know it. And crikey, could you imagine that happening a few years ago? Could you? I know I always tell you the same story about this, but it's a pertinent one because it is exactly the crucible of public opinion and media coverage that I just described. Is when I mentioned him in the last hour as well. My friend Peter Hitchens and I debated the legalisation of cannabis on BBC One shortly on one of those Sunday morning shows, shortly before I lost my dad. And I remember my dad ringing up and saying, flipping heck, because our side won by 70-odd%. And my dad rang up and said, flipping heck, son. He said, that never would have happened, would it, a few years ago? The idea of a BBC One phone-in poll on a religious/ethical discussion debate programme coming down so heavily in favour of legalisation really does show how the pendulum can swing. Maybe it swings back, I don't know. But the question I have for you today is specifically about the medicinal side of it, because that is part of the process about which I know pretty much nothing, actually. I mean, genuinely. I've seen the stories, of course, of people with it was glaucoma, was it? Was there an Observer journalist called Sue something who wrote about being handed a joint at a party and smoking it, and she'd been suffering from some really bad eye condition, and suddenly she could see. Not forever, but suddenly it sort of helped her see. People with multiple sclerosis have repeatedly and passionately argued that it helps them with their symptoms. I'm not a doctor. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't even know whether it's true or not. But there is a sense now, isn't there? Even, other countries have brought it in, have legalised it for medicinal purposes. There is a sense now that this is not quite an unstoppable train. I think if David Cameron had still been in Downing Street, just to refer briefly back to the last hour, it probably would have felt unstoppable. But with Theresa May in the chair, things may move a little more slowly. She seems to belong to a different generation, doesn't she, to David Cameron? I mean no ill by that or no criticism, but she does seem to belong to a slightly different generation. So I only want to hear from you to start with this hour. We'll probably broaden things out as the conversation progresses. But in the first instance, I only want to hear from you if you use it for medicinal purposes. And I don't think it would be too mischievous of me to suggest that the more removed you are from the traditional stereotype of a cannabis user, the more fun we will have together, the more helpful your contribution will be. So I don't know. People with migraines tell me that it helps, but does it? Does it really? 0345 60 60973 is the number you need. Just talk the rest of us through the medicinal side of it, because we've talked about the social use side of it probably close to 1 billion times on this programme. We've talked about the legalisation issues probably a zillion times. So does your mum use it? Do you get it for your gran? These are the sort of stories that I want. Do you get it for your gran because it really helps her with her arthritis or whatever it may be? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but medicinal is such a broad description, isn't it? You could use it for anything. It's not going to be good if you're smoking it with tobacco. It's not going to be good for your lungs or anything like that, but you can eat it, I think. You can inhale it in ways that steer clear of tobacco. You can get things now where you heat it up to release the relevant psychoactive substances, but you don't release any of the carcinogenic substances. So there are many, many ways you can ingest it. You could get the equivalent of vapes, I think, now in some of the American states where it has been legalised. But historically, they tell us, of course, that cannabis just sort of makes you feel more relaxed and chills you out, to coin a slightly anachronistic phrase. So you could argue that was medicinal. Do you see what I mean by it being possibly too broad a church? Oh, it really helps me chill. Is that medicinal? Talk about having a tincture or a small sherry of an evening. People describe that as medicinal, but I want to know the medical condition you think it is addressing, okay? Apologies if you were waiting to talk to David Cameron. We will perhaps return to that subject, or will we just be saying David who by the end of the year? That's showbiz and indeed politics. But I want to free up the phone lines now for this one. 0345 60 60 973. No opinion to start with, just stories. This is where I'm at my most vulnerable. This is where you can humiliate me on an epic scale by simply not ringing. I don't want you to ring in and tell me why cannabis is great or why it's the end of civilization as we know it. I simply want to learn more about the so-called medicinal applications, the things you genuinely believe it helps you deal with, or the symptoms you genuinely believe it helps alleviate. And obviously, top of the class on this would be medical qualifications, people who, perhaps to their own surprise, find themselves persuaded that actually my patient has been helped by this. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. Because also, to get it out there, I sometimes worry when we talk about this I have a habit of describing it as a sort of unalloyed good that should be legalised immediately. It isn't. I mean, the research into psychological damage is far from conclusive, but what is, I think, fair to say is it robs people of motivation. It robs you of motivation. You are less likely to go the extra mile, as it were, if you're a habitual cannabis user than you are if you're not. Yeah, I don't know why that is. It just sort of takes a little bit of the bounce out of people. But there will be medical conditions that actually demand the removal of bounce. 0345 6060 973. What do you use it for? And are you sure it works? How would you prove to me that it actually helps with your medical condition, as opposed to you getting the same buzz out of it that people who aren't poorly get, and you think somehow that qualifies as a medicinal use? Don't forget, you can email james@lbc.co.uk, you can tweet at Mr. James OB, and you can, as ever, although I always keep promising to read out more of them. I'm getting a lot better at this. You can email james@lbc.co.uk. It's specifically the medicinal, because oddly, the health issues are often cited as the negatives, aren't they? It's the damage it can do to young people's psychological health. And now, on the other side of the debate, you're having the benefits it can have for possibly older people's physical health. Let's find out. Hugh is in Notting Hill. So quite a few calls from Notting Hill today. I suppose it's part of the David Cameron farewell, Hugh. What would you like to say?
Hi there. I've used cannabis for chronic back pain in the past. It's by far the most effective. And in fact, the National Health had me on tramadol for many, many months. And I developed a bit of a dependency on the tramadol and used cannabis to move away from that and still get the relief from the pain before I had the operation.
Tramadol being a very serious and, as you say, potentially quite addictive painkiller. So, did you realise that? How did you discover the benefits of cannabis for your back pain?
Well, one day I realised that the reason I was taking another tramadol pill wasn't because of the pain; it was because my whole body was in pain because I was
craving the
suffering
pill.
from withdrawal from the tramadol.
Frightening, isn't it?
Which is terrifying. And the National Health did actually nothing to help me in dealing with that problem. In fact, their solution was to give me more tramadol.
Did you? So you had to sort of cross over into criminality then to secure your medicine, so to speak.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it is by far the most effective chronic pain relief that I came across to deal with that condition.
I mean, I'd like to think of myself as a bit of an expert on this subject, but I know nothing about this. Is there any, I don't know if you've done any research, is there any sort of basis to this, or is it, it worked for you, obviously, and I'm certainly not going to quibble with you, but have you looked into it any deeper? Do you know whether there's any sort of medical foundation to what you describe?
Well, I mean, an awful lot of dealing with chronic pain is mental rather than physical or pharmaceutical. And the way that one's brain actually processes pain is a complex and opaque way of dealing with things.
Because the pain isn't in the back, as it were. The pain is in the brain. It's the back telling the brain to feel pain in the back. I see what you mean. So a psychoactive.
In order to protect it, yeah. Yes. But I think you've also got to look at the reasons why cannabis was criminalized in the first place. My understanding is that the first time cannabis was criminalized was at the end of the Prohibition years in America, when the agency that had been overseeing Prohibition, as soon as Prohibition was over, they had nothing to oversee, so they criminalized cannabis.
And then there's the cotton element of the conversation as well, which I think comes from a similar era where the very, very powerful cotton lobby didn't want hemp becoming commonplace, and so they act in a protectionist fashion. I like these insights, but in terms of this hour of conversation, it's the back pain that interests me the most, Hugh. And there you have it. Did you tell your doctor, Hugh? Are you still there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you ever tell your doctor what you were doing?
Very much so, yeah. He even advised me as to what kind of cannabis to get.
Shut the front door.
No.
So what? Really? He said, yeah. So he completely recognised.
Told me to avoid skunk, to look for the more natural, normal varieties.
Traditional, as it were. Well, there you go. And Hugh sounds like a stand-up guy. No reason to doubt him. Doctor, yes, OK. Well, be careful. You don't want to get yourself arrested. Steer clear of the heavy stuff and try and get yourself some of that. And imagine this conversation 20 years ago. Middle England would be spitting its dummy out on a scale we haven't seen since June the 23rd. Laura is in Brighton. Laura, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi. I actually use cannabis oil that a friend makes for me because I've got a condition, quite a rare one, called Ehlers-Danlos, and it can be so painful that even Oromorph, which I'm prescribed, doesn't work. But Oromorph and all opiates also have the other problem in that if you have gut problems, like you do with EDS, it can cause partial paralysis of the stomach. Then you add opiates in, then you can't go to the loo at all.
Oh, Lord. I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Yeah. Which is horrible. Wow. So cannabis actually doesn't have that side effect.
How did you discover this?
I
Laura?
noticed it on a couple of groups, and I used to be a lawyer before, unfortunately, my career was taken from me due to ill health.
Oh.
But I just thought, do you know what? I couldn't deal with not having any pain relief because, unfortunately, Oromorph was my only option.
And that was creating almost as many problems as it was solving.
Problems, but also, it doesn't actually work that well. When you actually take it long term, and I certainly wasn't overusing it, I'd wait till I was crying in pain before my husband would say, please take something, you're driving me mad.
Oh, it's not very sympathetic.
I would wait until, no, but you know what I mean.
I do, yes,
you don't want to take it because you can. Also, it's very, very addictive, and you do not want to get addicted to anything.
And
like
it zonks you out a bit, I imagine, doesn't it, if it's an opiate?
Well, yeah, it either makes you a sort of high, but complete zombie. It's not a nice drug, and to be honest, cannabis is a lot more gentle on the system. You've obviously got to be careful which varieties you use. But in the UK, I don't know if you know, but you can actually already buy the CBD properties of products. That is the bit that doesn't get you high. Unfortunately, the bit that you really need for very strong pain relief is THC, and that is the bit that's illegal at the moment in the UK. But I don't know why they just don't legalise it. It's really silly. And if you don't want to smoke it, you can take it as an oil so that you're not filling your lungs full of
How did you... I
don't want to do.
Don't want you to incriminate yourself, but I don't think it really falls into that sort of territory anymore. How did you get hold of it then, as a former lawyer living in... I mean, I know Brighton has quite a bohemian reputation.
It does. A friend who does some indoor gardening. Let's put it that way.
So you just knew someone socially who could sort you out, as they used to say.
Yes, yeah, I found out there was someone socially. Because it just comes up in conversation, what do you do for pain? Or there really isn't anything. Oh, really? Or maybe I can help you. I thought, oh, here it comes.
Has anyone ever tutted at you? Has anyone ever tutted at you? Have you ever... Does your mum know?
No, it's something... no, must admit. We keep it very quiet for obviously...
That was a great question. Sorry, he says, patting himself on the back. Does your mum know? That's what we really... That's when the pendulum would have swung completely to the other side, isn't it? When you tell your mum.
Yeah, you tell your parents. To be honest, no, but if they knew, I don't think they would have a problem with it, to be honest. I certainly do not use it recreationally. It's only when the pain gets to a certain level and I need something just to be able to knock it on the head. But it also helps with the constant sickness that I have. I'm on tablets for that, but they don't help enough. But it does help as well. There's lots of things it helps for.
And have you...
And I did try to get it the legal way first, by the way. There is a spray that's for MS sufferers called Sativex.
That's right, yes. And that has the THC in it.
It does, but you're not allowed to get it off licence for any other condition other than MS, not even cancer sufferers at the moment.
And it's for the spasticity associated with MS, you're right.
Yeah, and it does really help, but that's a THC element, and that's the problem. When people buy the CBD thinking this is the hemp part almost, it doesn't work for any sort of problem.
I have to say, Laura, you're talking very quickly for a cannabis user.
Sorry. Yes, I'm always used to talk quickly. People think that you get completely stoned on it, but actually, compared to the heavy opiates, and you're still allowed to drive on opiates. That's a crazy thing. It might warn you to say, oh, you shouldn't drive, but people can be on very high doses of legally prescribed morphine, and they can drive. It's crazy.
It's 2 for 2, isn't it? I don't think anyone's going to argue with either you nor Hugh. And I'm run out of time, actually, but I'll ask other callers what's happened when they've spoken to their own doctors about it, because that's the interesting thing, isn't it? As well as the personal patient experiences. But I'm a little late for this. It's 11:17. Joanne has the travel for you.
Thanks, James. Good morning. In London, long delay.
4850.
22 minutes after 11. See, James, says Michael, late for the travel news when you talk about cannabis. That's what it does to you. It makes you late for everything. We were only talking about it. And today we are only talking about the medicinal use of cannabis. Not a conversation I can remember having with you before. 22 minutes after 11 is the time. Carl is in Manchester. Carl, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Great show.
Thanks, mate.
I've just, we found out my missus, she's got cancer, type 4 cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's a bad one, like, you know.
Oh, mate.
So I've just thought, sod it, I've just spent $3,000 on cannabis oil, and we're going to try that now. She's been taking it little bits at a time, and now she's just going to start upping it.
Why £3,000 worth? Why have you gone straight in with £3,000 worth?
Well, I spent 120 quid and got it shipped from Holland the first time round.
Right.
But I know certain circles, and if you buy it in bulk, it's a lot cheaper.
So yeah, you just get more bang for your buck. And if you, I'm not here to criticise. Tell me how tell me how it changes your wife. Tell me, can you see the effect it's having on her?
Yeah, well, she's only just started taking it, but because the cancer's getting about all down one, she had a brain tumour, and it's she's got all like very weak all down one side and struggles to walk and stuff, and it just eases her. It really does seem to ease her. We've got some scans coming up in that, so I've just got my fingers crossed, and I'm just thinking it's worth a try. Nothing else can. You know what I mean? I
do, and I think you're a wonderful husband, Carl. I can hear from your voice that you'd climb Mount Everest if you thought it would help her, wouldn't you?
Oh, of course, definitely.
Have you spoken to any doctors about it? Have you mentioned it to any of her doctors?
I haven't. No, I've said that to her. I said she would tell the consultant, but she won't have none of it because she's started getting in trouble for having it.
Well, what sort of cancer is it? Because there might be someone listening who can sort of.
It's a brain tumour which she had removed, but when they biopsied it, it was type 4.
Okay.
So they said type 4 cancer is incurable.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I really am. But hey, you never know, do you? The benefits of the cannabis might just mean that the time you get to spend together will be that little bit better because of the pain reduction. But it's people like you that I think this report is aimed for. People like your wife, when Mike Barnes, who's written this report, simply says the government must have the political courage to accept the scientific rationale, and that is it. There is your scientific rationale. Rue is in Brighton as well. Carl, thank you, mate. Take care, and my love to your wife. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Rue's in Brighton. Rue, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How's it going?
Well.
So I've got a condition called fibromyalgia, which is very similar to Ehlers-Danlos, which is what Laura talked about a couple of calls ago.
Very painful.
Yeah, exactly. It basically means that my body responds to pain in an unusual and an incorrect way.
Oh.
And one of the main consequences that has is on my sleeping, actually getting to sleep at night because it gets in the way a lot. So cannabis and smoking marijuana actually helps me relax and kind of get over a lot of those symptoms, and it's actually the most efficient way for me to get to sleep now. I was on sleeping pills for a while, but again, like Laura said with tramadol, you can get kind of hooked and their effectiveness reduces over time, whereas that doesn't seem to happen with the right kinds of cannabis.
How did you discover this?
Pretty much by accident, I suppose. I mean, I was just smoking and it helped. But this was a while ago now, and I've since tried a bunch of different things and keep on coming back to a bedtime spliff, which really it seems to be more effective than
and the physical, because I think anybody who's ever done it will recognise the psychological effects that you describe. But you're because most people who use it socially are not in pain, so you actually feel a diminishment in the pain that you are suffering when you smoke.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a funny balance with the health side of things, because I've got there's two sides of it. I can smoke and get a better night's sleep, or I can not smoke and lose out on a few hours of sleep.
You really notice, even on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I really do, and it's funny trying to balance that, because obviously it's definitely detrimental, smoking, in some ways, but then, is it more detrimental than losing out on a few hours of sleep?
And there are ways to minimise the detriment of the smoking, of course. That's why I think previous callers have referred to cannabis oil, and of course the vaporising nature could take away the carcinogenic impact, potentially carcinogenic impact of smoking, what I believe you described as a spliff, which must be what the young people call them. Rue, thank you. Have you spoken to a doctor at all? Have you mentioned it to any of your doctors?
Not doctors, but my chiropractor has advised it, and a few other specialists that I've talked to, rheumatologists. It's
hard to think. I mean, the world has changed so much in the course of 10 to 20 years on this, because this would have been, as I said a moment ago, Middle England would have been up in arms at this sort of conversation, and yet Middle England has discovered that their symptoms get alleviated as well. Rue, thank you. And again, it's one of those hours where everybody ringing in is in some sort of pain, so you run out of words to express the sympathy you feel. But the piece, there's a very good piece here by the fellow who's written this report, the report showing strong evidence that medical cannabis can help with chronic pain. And here's the first line. You, yes, you, are effectively using the essential ingredients of cannabis right now. You and everyone else. That's because our brains and other parts of the body have a natural endocannabinoid system that is now known to assist with how we deal with pain. Not just pain, but also the control of movement and the protection of the brain after damage. Takes us back to Carl, doesn't it? And a host of other functions. I love that. That's the kind of thing you'd find someone back in the day sitting in the corner of a room in Camden talking about the endocannabinoid system, man. It's James, isn't it? Yeah, mate. James, man, do you know about the endocannabinoid system? Because you are all, right, even those of you who are having a smoke, you're not toking, but you've still got an endocannabinoid system. And it turns out it's true. It's actual science. James is in Blackheath. James, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi. My wife took Rick Simpson's oil, cannabis oil, for about 3 years. She was diagnosed with breast cancer starting at stage 4, so immediately straight in with metastases.
Yes.
She had some very good months on it. She used it therapeutically rather than for pain control, although it did help with the sleep a lot because she did have a sleep problem.
Yes.
It's always difficult to attribute therapeutic success when you're taking more than one drug.
Of course.
But she thought, as did one or two of her doctors, that it acted as a very good adjuvant to mainline therapy. She lasted 7 years, which is a bit of a record for someone starting with bone metastases. She had liver metastases for about half the period that she survived. So she would have recommended it very highly.
I know, James, I know. And the fact that you can come on the radio now and talk about it in this way means that what she learned gets taught to others as well.
She had some funny stories too.
Go on.
She used to...
Just hang on a second. Can we hold the news, please? Okay, carry on, James.
She used to travel to a clinic in Germany, and she, to begin with, she took her stuff over with her because she didn't want to interrupt treatment. So she thought, the first time out, she thought the best thing to do was stick it in her hand luggage. She put it in a prescription medicine bottle.
Very wise.
That might fool somebody. And then everything that could go wrong went wrong. She went from Stansted and she flew into Baden-Baden. She thought, I'll fly to a tiny airport where no one's going to be checking anything. Well, at Stansted, she was queuing up to go through security, where they x-ray all your stuff. Suddenly, on her aisle, they were swabbing everything. If I change now, they'll think that's suspicious. So
it's not at all suspicious, just to hop into the other lane.
So she went through, and they didn't find anything. She said, were you looking for, just out of interest, were you looking for drugs or explosives? They said, explosives, ma'am. So I said, fine. Text me saying, I've made it, I'm through. In Baden-Baden, you have to walk across the tarmac to get in, and they closed the entrance. Everyone was queuing up outside. She thought, this is a bit odd. And then she saw them come out with sniffer dogs.
Oh, Lord.
And so she dropped to the back thinking, I'm going to get arrested, but I'm going to go through last so I don't get embarrassed. And they're up and down with the sniffer dogs, and then get to the one woman in front of her, and big pat on the head for the dog, it finds something, and it was a training exercise. So in they go. She thinks, I've made it. So queuing up passport control, 4 aisles. Suddenly the bloody sniffer dog's back again, going up and down, up and down.
It's like a comedy.
But she did make it through without being caught. So she left her stash at the clinic so that she didn't have to do that every time.
Good grief. Oh, well, I love that story. It's got the sort of...
She used to think she'd have a good story for, a documentary or movie. She thought it was like the Blackheath Buyers Club. But, she used to go on the cancer website. She spent a lot of time on the cancer website talking about stuff, helping people, and medical cannabis comes up quite a lot. The moderator tends to shut it down, but she would end up helping people how to source the good stuff, how to do the doses.
Yes.
And I've driven up the M1 with her to lend somebody some stuff whose supply's been interrupted.
Is that really?
So they would get into this lending each other. There's a lot of rubbish being sold. A lot of stuff is just a scam. So getting a decent supply is very tricky, and once you've got onto it, you have to look after it. Her supplier in Holland got busted, which was one thing that interrupted her treatment. The police shut him down. They didn't imprison him because I don't think they knew what it was, but the neighbour complained about the smell.
I see. I mean, this is really at the very heart of today's story, isn't it? This is sort of self-proven. And I guess also your wife's condition meant that she could throw caution to the wind in a way, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah, no, you just got to go for it. Be bold. But she was, having researched something, she would help a lot of people how to manage the increase in the dose. Therapeutically, you've got to get up, I think, to a gram
okay.
You've got to get up to about a gram a day.
She became quite the expert. That's quite a legacy, James.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Isn't it?
And we got a lot of internet, a lot of email, notices.
Of course. Well, I'm learning.
Thank you very much.
I'm learning every minute of this hour, but perhaps not quite the crash course that your wife went on. I'm so glad you were listening today, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You take care. It's 11:33. A little late. Ros Unwin with the headlines.
Scottish nurse Pauline Kafaki, who has...
And on LBC.
37 minutes after 11, and James there, I think, just before the delayed news, moving the conversation onto an entirely different level when he spoke with such love of his late wife and her expertise. I want to imagine somewhat unexpected expertise after her cancer diagnosis in the world of self-medicating, using cannabis to self-medicate, and indeed international drug smuggling. That was such a lovely story. People sometimes think, what's the best thing about your job? And it's calls like that just take you completely out of where you were and drop you in a whole new place entirely. And that's why this isn't just a lazy conversation about cannabis. Oh, it's great. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. It's actually about science. It's about the medical efficacy of this substance that we continue to ignore or to not properly embrace because of, well, we're back once again to all those people who make a living trying to frighten us. And drugs have always been a big part of that process. Ghost train ticket sellers, as I have come to call them, the people who know that it's a great business model. You sell a lot more papers frightening the life out of people, whether you're telling them about the weather or about immigrants or about drugs. You're going to make a lot more money. You're never going to buy a paper that says everything's great on its front page. Everything's great, relax. The paper you're going to buy says on its front page, oh my God, there's a man with 10 children in a council house. Right, I'm going to buy that. What colour is he? Is he foreign? Oh, I'm bloody furious. That's how you sell papers. Drugs? Children are being turned into an army of zombies. Okay, yeah, I'll have a look at that. I don't want my children to be turned into an army of zombies. Nice people with cancer feel better using substance. Man, that should be the one we buy, shouldn't it? Or even not nice people. Don't want to discriminate. Strange times. Katie is in Bexley Heath. Katie, what would you like to say?
Hello, good morning.
Hi,
yeah, I think perhaps there's also the point of who loses money through it. I mean, that may be another issue, perhaps, is that, the pharmaceutical companies maybe have got a fair bit to lose. But my daughter, she suffers from something called Lyme disease, and she also has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, as your earlier lady did.
Oh, gosh.
And it seems to be quite common in Lyme, so whether it's exacerbated, we don't know, by the Lyme disease. But, the feature of pain is very, very high in Lyme. And it's one of those things that, again, she's been given tramadol.
How old is she?
She's 22.
Okay.
She contracted Lyme at 4. She had the classic rash. She was never treated. I didn't know.
No, of course.
She was never treated. She was tested. We were told she was negative, and she subsequently crashed at 18 and ended up with, it took another 2 years of denial from our medics. We had to go private, and she was then diagnosed with late-stage Lyme. We then found on her medical notes from when she was 4 that she actually was positive all the way along, never treated. But, it's affected her. Her spine's degenerated. It's affected all of her joints. It's affected her brain, neurologically, and her heart. So she's very badly affected, and she does get relief from this. And actually, we've been told by a couple of doctors, yes, try it. Be very careful, but try it.
Is that how it came into your life? Because a doctor told you to try it? Or had you got hold of some because you'd heard it would work and then mentioned it to the doctor and they said, yes, that's a good idea, carry on? Which way round? Was it chicken or egg?
It was, you mentioned it, actually. I mentioned it because I've been doing lots and lots of research.
But you hadn't bought any at that point?
No, and I've spoken to people in America and Canada who have been treated with it, and there is a particular doctor in Canada who treats Lyme patients with cannabis oil. And we asked the doctor, but I know people that, several people in America that have got, they've actually got into remission, which is very difficult with late-stage Lyme disease, even with lots of antibiotics.
So, hang on. You're getting it all across. You're doing brilliantly. You really are. And this is so important for other parents who are wondering how to help their children. But can I ask you the comedy question? Do you mind?
No.
How did you score?
I did the same. I have done the same pretty much as the others have spoken to you about. You can buy CBD oil. It does work, but it is not apparently as effective, and it's very, very difficult unless you make it yourself or can source it to get the THC. Now, the THC, we know, can actually kill Lyme. So it's one of those things. We can't access it. We can't access the treatment, and our doctors are not even trained in Lyme disease in this country. They don't want to know.
What faith do you have in the current government acting upon this all-party parliamentary group urging legalisation after charging the prominent neurologist, Professor Mike Barnes, to review evidence from around the world? His conclusion is unequivocal. We analysed over 20,000 scientific and medical reports. The results are clear. Cannabis has a medical benefit for a wide range of conditions. It's news to many. It's not news to you, Katie. Do you think Theresa May looks like a Prime Minister that might wave the flag on this one?
Well, I hope she does, because the same thing happened to Professor Nutt, didn't it, several years ago, who said the same thing. And people are being sacked. There are, I think... I'm sorry to say this. I think there are a lot of people who have quite a lot of power who this perhaps doesn't benefit. But we do know that the American Cancer Society state on their website that cannabis helps cancer. It's actually on their website. We know Monsanto have patented a GM version of cannabis. So it's known about, but when are people going to be helped?
I suppose when the clamour becomes loud enough and the number of people shouting become unignorable, and we'll continue to play our small part in that. I can only do so with calls like yours, Katie, and James and everyone else who's rung in today, Carl. There's a lot of misery out there that is being alleviated by this substance, which a prominent professor, a prominent neurologist, credits as having obvious and proven medical benefits. Now, in a logical universe, and I know we don't live in one, and I know we never will, human beings are not by nature slavishly logical, but in a logical universe, this would already be on the statute book, wouldn't it? You'd look at the research, you'd look at the science. You've got opiates that are legal. You've got painkillers being given to people that are addictive and potentially dangerous, debilitating. And then you've got people like Katie's daughter, who there is no downside to this deployment, except, of course, the difficulty of getting hold of it and the criminality that can sometimes be involved. I believe that with greater research, says Professor Barnes, it has the potential to help with an even greater number of conditions. And here's the thing. But this research is being stifled by the government's current classification of cannabis as having no medical benefit. So, scrap it. I don't actually have any phone lines free at the moment, but if I did, I'd really like to hear from someone whose mind has been changed by my callers this hour, by my amazing, brave, open, honest, and sometimes quite emotional callers, because I'm not going to insult you, but if you can listen to that and still subscribe to the stupid school of thought that sort of says, "Oh, reefer madness," ooh, if you then you're not very nice. It's 11:45. Joanne Webb is here with the travel.
Thanks, James. Good morning. Big problems on the train.
4850.
It's 11:48. You're listening to LBC. Now, whether you're a landlord, tenant or homeowner, Clive Bull and his expert guests will answer your questions every Thursday night from 9 on LBC's Property Hour. And right now, you could win an Apple iPhone 6S, an Apple Watch Sport and a Monster portable battery pack. It's all thanks to Direct Line Landlord Insurance. Find out more about their de facto 5-star rated insurance by searching online for Direct Line Landlord. And for your chance to win and to download that Property Hour podcast, go to lbc.co.uk. This, if you're wondering what we're talking about this hour, if you've just tuned in, first of all, I need a letter off your mum to explain where you've been for the last hour and 50 minutes. But after that, here you go. This from Sean. I have stage 4 bowel and liver cancer, James. I've not had to take one painkiller since I started taking a smidgen of cannabis oil each night. I was previously taking it's 2 tweets, and I'm just moving up the screen, the maximum amount of painkillers, which still didn't take the pain away. The cannabis helps me sleep well and also does away with the chemotherapy sickness. So why are they not moving faster to classify it as having medical benefit? I'm going to say this, I'm sort of holding fire a bit on Theresa May, because it is very early days. Theresa Maybe, we could, I suppose, describe that as. She doesn't look to me like a Prime Minister who is going to embrace modernity when it comes to issues like drugs. I know she was one of the first to speak about the nasty party, the Conservative sort of toxic wing, but equally, I'm not going to hold my breath. And yet I think it is, as every caller is proving, of paramount importance. Phil is in Wokingham. Phil, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'd like to make some points about the human endocannabinoid system.
Yes.
And I'd like to give you some information which will, I think, be very helpful to those people that have called in that are using oil at the moment. And the first thing I would say is that the human endocannabinoid system was only discovered in 1992, and we're all born with it, all mammals, and it's almost as important, if not more important, than our own innate immune system. Our body is full of cannabinoid receptors, particularly in the brain and in the gut.
I'm not. You're going to have all the time in the world that you want, but I just want to clarify your qualifications, as it were, your position.
I'm not speaking as a doctor. Under the 1939 Cancer Act, doctors are not allowed to advise or prescribe any treatment for cancer other than chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery.
I didn't know that.
But yes. So that's very important.
But what's your interest? Why do you know so much? Is what I'm asking you to be.
Right, okay. Well, I'm actually speaking to doctors and professors from all over the world about this topic at the world's largest medical conference in London next month.
Okay.
I'm also attending a very big conference in Italy and speaking about it, and I've been doing it for 15 years.
So it's just a personal passion.
Well, I lost my mother and my mother-in-law and my uncle to cancer, so
you've really gone in deep on it then.
Well, I'm considered to be probably the leading expert in this field now.
Great stuff.
But
thank you for phoning. Carry on.
No, not at all, because I'm really concerned that people should know exactly what they're doing, and some people are getting good results, and other people are not getting good results. And the reason is, James, and this is not known by very many people at all, our cells actually suffer from a process of what we call methylation, which blocks the ability of the cannabinoids to be received by the body and absorbed into the body system. And so what they have to do is they have to go through a process of demethylation, which is very simple. I'll tell you that in a minute, in order to have the maximum effect of the cannabinoids. And demethylation, 80% of demethylation, believe it or believe it not, you can do by drinking green tea. Green tea has many, many properties, over 400 different properties, polyphenol properties in green tea. And by drinking that every day, that will help demethylate your receptors, your CB1 and CB2 receptors, and you will have a better effect with your oil. Secondly, CBD, cannabidiol, does not cure cancer.
No.
But the correct ratio of THC, tetrahydrocannabidiol, and CBD will. And there is a
possibly. I mean, I take your point. That's why I established what medical qualifications you have, and you're more than welcome to refer people to other works. But I generally don't let people come on the radio and say that they know the cure for cancer.
So I'll give you a reference there. Yeah. If you go to Amazon, everybody can do this, and there is a book called the Cannabis Health Index.
Okay.
There is over 100 different studies on all different diseases and the effects of cannabis oil on that.
So you will be among the least surprised people on the planet to hear today that the Professor Mike Barnes' research has led him to conclude that the government should should put cannabis on the list of substances that have a medical benefit immediately.
Well, James, Lord Maurice Saatchi lost his wife from breast cancer about 5 years ago now, and has been trying to repeal the 1939 Cannabis Act from the House of Lords, and has been unsuccessful. The 1939 Cancer Act,
yes.
And everybody can Google that.
No, I'm just checking.
And so some of the pharmaceutical companies in the UK have been developing cannabis-based products now for a number of years in order to try and patent and genetically modify the natural plant in order to, bring out a drug. In fact, Sativex can be prescribed by doctors today, and that is a cannabis oil, but it has been altered slightly genetically, so I can't.
There is more. There is a lot more to discover. Tell me about this conference.
It's the A4M International Conference held in London on October the 13th, 14th and 15th. But it's only for medical professionals.
No, I'm not planning on coming. Don't worry, Phil. I just wanted
to... No, you're more than welcome to come. I'll send you a ticket if you want.
I don't know. It depends what's on the telly. I'm joking. I think I probably would quite like to go. Always keen to hear actual evidence and facts, especially in this era where they're going out of fashion faster than loom bands. Phil, I'm cracking on because I've got a full switchboard. I sense you could probably keep educating and indeed illuminating us right up until Sheila Fogarty gets here in an hour and 5 minutes. But I've got so many people waiting. I have to let a couple of them in before the news. Martin, for example, in Bromley. Martin, what would you like to say?
Yes, good morning, James. On 7th of December last year, I was diagnosed with bilateral cancer, lung cancer, and they were two different kinds.
Right.
Within 3 days, and I've got to take my hat off the NHS,
yes.
I was on a drip machine up at Guy's Hospital for 7 hours.
Wow.
And that went on for, there were 5 sessions of it. Sorry, there's a train going past. Hang on.
You can tell we're live.
Sorry?
You can tell we're live, can't you, Martin?
Oh, well, I am live. Right, okay. It was stage 4, which is not inconsiderably good.
No, a master of understatement.
Absolutely. It's very English, Yes. But I went through that. I had, every scan under the sun, every diagnosis, every this, they did a thorough job. And the conclusion was that the top half of my left lung had to come out. So I had keyhole surgery to get that out. I was on morphine and God knows what. And that lady who said it bungs you up. Yes. By God, does it bung you up?
Yes.
You need a trowel. No,
mate, that was Martin. For heaven's sake, man, it's a family. People are about to have their lunch.
OK, you need a spatula.
Oh, very nice. Yes, that makes it the middle-class version of a trowel. A spatula. Well, move on, because I don't want to run out of time. But so where does cannabis come into the conversation?
Right. There were people there. Obviously, you meet up with us because you're on the same kind of schedule with other people.
Yes, absolutely.
And, the same old faces. The discussion with one of them. I've never done drugs in my life, nothing. Sure. I'm just not tempted.
Yes.
I'm not some wild old stoner sitting on my lawn going, why is the sky so tall, man?
Stop stereotyping people.
No, of course not.
So someone in the waiting room, so to speak, spoke to you about it?
And 2 or 3 of them, a bit sheepishly, given that there are criminal connections to this,
of course,
said they had taken it and it actually alleviated. It's more quality of life than cure, as far as they reported it. And I didn't even consider it, but I have considered it since. And I think it's beyond peradventure that there is some evidence. It may be anecdotal. It may be.
It's not anecdotal.
No, I'm being devil's advocate.
Yes, but so your fellow patients didn't tempt you to try it then?
No.
Why not?
It's just, I'm an ex-police officer. I'm a bit old-fashioned about that sort of thing, but it wasn't something that I contemplated then. But since then, I've met 2 people with muscular sclerosis, MS,
yes, multiple sclerosis.
Both of them are using cannabis, and they're not stoned. I mean, these are people of some sense and moderation, and they said it worked for us. Now, may I draw an analogy? When nuclear power came on the scene in 1943-45, it was a massively destructive, and it still is, of course, massively destructive force.
Got 20 seconds.
But since then, We've got nuclear power stations, which are a massive force for good. So why can we not look into the whole issue and do it properly? I don't mean somebody, phoning from his upstairs bedroom. Do it properly. Make a rational decision. It's not, you can...
And to do that, you've got to have your eyes and indeed your mind wide open. Martin, you took us up to the news quite perfectly, after which you'll find out.
On FM, OBC.
3 minutes after 12 is the time, and I've got to tell you, we could have carried that conversation about medicinal cannabis legislation on for several days, given the number of people calling in. We will return to it. Keep a very close eye on this, but as I fear, as Michael suggests in this tweet, which knits together two of the big stories at the moment, that we now have a government that does not pay attention to established evidence. For example, secondary, modern and grammar schools. So medicinal cannabis may well prove to be the same. That's one reason why we'll keep an eye on it. And here's another from Ashley in Beaconsfield. I'm a very strict conservative when it comes to drugs. Can't stand the things. However, listening to your callers, and if controlled correctly, I now think they should be legalised. Talking of cannabis, nobody should suffer if there is a cure or even a drug that would make life slightly more bearable.